do you think that all of this now also is going faster and faster? It's getting, in a sense, then warmer and warmer and more severe, maybe also as a kind of consequence of that because of that we are not looking at the inner world or the self.
Yes, it is. And of course I make a personal study of that a lot. I'm very troubled by what I see. I think a lot of the fauna death, these beachings of whales, these beachings of porpoises, you see, suddenly a huge schools of fish go missing, death in the fauna. We had that tribulation about the bees. It turned out to be a bit of a hoax, but everyone knows that there's problems with the frogs, and there is a problem. Well, it's very easy to understand once you understand that there's an earth grid, and the earth grid is absolutely an extension of human consciousness. People think that's a preposterous thing to say. Then tell me how the internet works. There's no wires, right? There's digital space out there, and there's your stuff in front of your computer. Well, I'm talking the same thing. Just a higher frequency than what you see as digital today. Is this psychotronic energy, that comes from the unconscious mind that connects to the Earth, Mother Earth, Gaia. This is absolutely understood now. Bruce Lipton has talked about just how much of your unconscious mind operates. So that other brain, that ancestral brain, the racial memory, the unconscious, is working, and it is directly in dialogue with the Earth grid. And our toxicity, by not being dealt with on the upper end here, is back, just like a sewer, is therefore backing up. And the Earth grid then has to then go into a function in which it's cleansing human toxicity. It's not really meant to do that. But as we know, all Earth circuitry systems are compensatory. So the Earth grid then turns itself over to hygiene. But even it is now backing up. Because the human being refuses to deal with his own toxicity. Remember the Native American Indians, the shaman, everyone from Bruce Lee onwards have been telling you, deal with your own issues. Deal with your own problem. You are your own temple. How can you take the beam? How can you take the, what is it? The Bible says, how can you fix the sight of another when there's a big beam in your own eye? Your own sight is impaired. You see, all the greatest mystics have been telling you, deal with your own house first. If you troubleth your own house, you'll inherit the wind, right? Well, we are inheriting the wind now. But the thing is that this psychic toxicity, it's like a thing. I actually, in my eyes, see it as actual sewage. I think of it in very physical ways. And I think people should need to do that. This is backing up into the lifeblood, the capillaries, the veins, and the arteries of the earth. It is and the lymphocytes of the earth, which is the earth grid, cannot deal with it. And therefore, that is backing up into the animals. Animal consciousness is now disaffected, you see. And highly sensitized, much more evolved animal species. Hopefully when we're talking about magic, we can get into this thing about the inanimate, so-called. They are now processing our toxicity. And this is why also the Egyptian gods had animal heads. It's also one of the reasons why the animals in India were sacred, like Shiva, who wore the horns and stuff like that, and sat upon the tiger, There's a Durga, Kali being the black goddess, but the serpents were around her, and the animal kingdom is very much involved in all ancient iconography. There's a reason for that. It's because these are the antenna of the earth.
So, we talked a little bit about the New Age movements and Al Gore and the global warming cult, or what we should call it. One thing I did want to kind of sneak in here also is, how about the so-called, truth movement, or even the conspiracy movement? Do you think that also could be kind of a niche or a temporary escape for some people, or, a new cult to join for a while? Or
yeah, it's a fashion. It can easily be that. There's the heart of it, the true part of it, the research community, people who are dedicated to spiritual growth, dedicated to learning, dedicated to knowledge, philosophy. See, before philosophers were called philosophers, they were called sages. Sage. Philosopher was only a very recent word that came in Greece. Before that, the man who looked at the knowledge, in fact, the first person to ever use the term philosopher was Pythagoras, actually. Before that, they were called sages. And the sage is the Sophia. He's questing after the knowledge. And you will have that within that movement. And then, of course, you'll have all the, the people who join the bandwagon, thinking it's cool. And you get a lot of that. So, I try to distinguish in my work between the people who are just on the fashion part of it and those who are really authentically involved. But you're going to find that in every era. It's not that the subject itself is bad.
No, definitely not. It might have stumbled upon the truth as...
yeah, very much.
Yeah. So, okay, so sorcery is twofold. not only to perpetuate the inauthentic life, but also to act adversarially to the authentic man or life. It's an adversarial energy as a counteractive force to those who try to awaken to an authentic life.
Right. This is extremely important for people to realize that sorcery is not just one form of action. It's not just the creation and the sustainment and the perpetuation of what we call the inauthentic life. It has also got a dual aspect. Because there are authentic people in the world. There are virtuous people in the world who either from birth or from later, snapping out of it, so to speak, are trying to pursue the real. Well, it's not going to be a bed of roses. It's not a scenic route by any means. Quite the reverse. So anyone who's really been a truth seeker or a person who's, what I would call a dharmic man or the authentic man is going to know all about that other kind of sorcery. Because it's the sorcery that is adversarial in nature, and it brings you the confusion, the loss, the alienation, the obstacles, the mental doubt. All that it's mostly internal stuff. So let it be known, that the road is quite, lonely in a way, because the person who starts to seek for the truth will encounter this other action. Yeah, that is known to people. The great trials of Hercules, Odin, and the story of Odin, of course, is hugely important with this. Siddhartha Road, the road of thorns. However, you see, there's no exception, and this is something you can't instill in somebody. It's just, to me, there's no alternative. One has to discover what the forms of oppression are, and one has to go through the suffering, or whatever you want to call it, of the authentic life.
The dark night of the soul.
The so-called dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
I believe that people are going to go through it anyway. It's just a perception thing. It's just what perspective you're at. I look at the people in life of regimentation and conformity, those who are taking what's called a karmic role, as being in a greater form of pain, actually, in a way, because their soul is screaming. And they are harming themselves. Like Socrates said, to harm another is to harm oneself. Well, to harm oneself is to harm another. Those people are harming themselves. They're not living the life that they've come here to live. And the search for that is not sorcery, it's magic. But you're absolutely right. Sorcery is also this adversarial shield or cloaking that prevents you from understanding the magic of life. It's there to distort you. It's there to distract you. Remember in the beginning of Monty Python, The Meaning of Life, when all they're sitting around the walnut table after they've discovered all the things that, life is all about and the big secret, and they talk about, well, the problem why people are not enlightened is because they get distracted, and then he gets distracted right away, right, like looking out the window. Well, that's the moment of sorcery, And they will, literally in that movie, a building, right, a skyscraper is toppling to hit their skyscraper. That's beautifully done, because literally the sorcery will magnify itself to any magnitude to get you to be distracted. From the most smallest thing, you see, to the biggest event, constitutes a form of distraction. And so my message is that then the study of those forms of distraction becomes very important. Not looking for what enlightenment is. No. That's become totally meaningless now. Now what is important is your discovery of all the elements of distraction. That's the truly creative, mind that starts to discover, okay, there's adversarial action. How does it work?
And the things that you're traumatized by or feel like a phobia or something,
right.
they will grow and become larger and larger as because
if
you're
you
more
don't understand that they're operating on you from outside. If you think they're auto-generated, then of course you're caught in them forever, thinking it's my problem, my this, my that. When you realize that these things are built into the universe, that they're there to impede you, then you change your perspective and you start looking at them more as a detective, and they lose power over you. But that's another huge sort of investigation as to this. I just want to mention for now that there are these two forms of sorcery. There's many forms of sorcery, but the two main ones is that the manufacture of the inauthentic life, now that you've chosen that, and the resistance factor to those who are trying to escape from the inauthentic life. All those things that might hold you back from progress. And I see it a lot. I see people complaining all the time, I can't do it, it's too much, I suffer too much, there's too much alienation, I feel there's too much loss in my life. Where's this going? And people are very interested in, look, is this worth it?
Yeah. Can I gain something from it? Or
So I say, well, why are you concerned about that now? There's sorcery happening now, see? If you're doing it for its truth, you don't question, is it going to work out tomorrow? The question is, are you doing it for the real motive right now? Does it feel good now? Is this something you really want to do? And if it's not, have the courage to go back to the other way. Nobody's judging you, you know. If you can't manage it, that's fine. Then you give up.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about magic? You know, dive into that now. About true magic and what it might be, and you know, in opposite to sorcery, and how people can, you know, discover the magic in their own lives and so forth.
Yeah. Well, see, basically, sorcery. It's not really that easy to define magic. You know, that's why we have to mostly define what sorcery is. What is anti-magic? Because, and again, remember, we're up against a huge wall of what people think magic is, which is mostly phony rubbish, put there by the media, and see storybooks. Again, the wand waving, you know, enhancing your ego, you know, and all of that. That's not what it is at all. But sorcery, let's just recap it, is anything that interferes or distorts the true and natural action of anything. We're talking about human progress here. You know, that which gets in the way or disaffects anything natural. So you have something that's happening naturally, which is man's growth, his evolution, his development, his free thinking, his discovery of himself and the world. Well, we'll be talking about all the things that get in the way of that. That's sorcery. Sorcery is that which interferes or distorts the true and natural organic action of anything, right, from outside. Something that perverts natural function. And we are living in a world of that. But we have perceived that, you know, magic is often the working of one mind or a mind over other minds. No, that's not magic, that's sorcery. When one mind is trying to, you know, operate over another mind, because people say mind over matter, like you read in the beginning, or mind over mind. Well, that's what these sorcerers are doing. They are trying to operate mentally over you. And if you give them the right to do that, then you will be the, you know, disciple or apostle of sorcery, as they are. It's the, as we said, the creation, it's the maintenance of what we see all around us. But you see, this true black art, what people have got to understand, is that this black art is operating to block out true creativity. Magic is the discovery of yourself and what true creativity is. Because where there's creativity, there's selfhood. Right? But where there's technology, not so. In one of the DVDs, I think it was Divination and the Goddess, I talk about what technology is and why it came about. Technology is nothing more than, or science is nothing more than rivalry of the female, the female power to give birth. It was seen as so magical and so on that man wanted to simulate that. And so technology was kind of born.
Would you categorize that as something unnatural then?
Yes. Yeah, in a way. Because the motive of it was to rival. You know, I don't think that technology is the true expression of the masculine principle. I think it's a distortion of the masculine principle because it was born out of rivalry. You know, what man's real purpose is on Earth, if he's not meant to be involved in science and technology, is a really big question. You know, and I tend to then become, you know, I'm very intrigued by what Heidegger, the philosopher, was saying as what man's true role is. It's a little bit hard to explain, though. He was talking about something very different than just, you know, this commitment of man towards this Dr. Strangelovian sort of technology of making his children his mechanical children, dehumanizing the world, you see, and conquering nature and conquering the feminine, right? He was talking about more, he expressed it by poetic terms in which he called man as the shepherd of being, that man's true role was to shepherd being. Again, you know, that's like a 2-hour show right there, you know, start explaining the ins and outs of all of that. But in the same DVD, I do remember now that what our problem is not only that the ego is fragile, not only that it's terribly fragmented and therefore susceptible to control, but that the Eastern people in Indian philosophy, they talk about Maya, right? Meaning the illusion. Right? But in the DVD, Divination of the Goddess, I refute the meanings that have been given to that word, just like I refute the traditional definitions of Dharma and Karma. So I also refute the traditional Indian interpretation of Maya and explain in the DVD that Maya is not that there